They're all about policing odor in the name of health, until it's about asthmatics and perfume. Hello, my name's Kate, otherwise known as Ginger's Greetings here on YouTube and on Instagram, and I just wanted to say, I'm sorry it's been a bit. I've been helping my friend's sibling cram a semester's worth of college application process into 2 weeks, so you can imagine I've been busy. That aside, I'm going to be talking about body odor in the context of a bunch of other stuff. Let's get started. After my last video, I found myself at a loss of what direction I should go in. I knew I wanted my next video to be something personal, talking about my life or my opinions, but I was worried about delving too heavily into the art commentary or storytime communities. While I understand there are art commentary channels that are tasteful, there's a world of difference between sharing your opinions on serious issues and just digging up dirt about somebody to try to cancel them. I also don't really want to brand myself as a storytime channel because most of my interesting life stories are pretty dark. I understand that the easiest ways to gain traction on a platform prioritizing clicks is either to A, drag down others, or B, use a lot of shock factor, but I'd rather make content that I can personally be proud of. Not that I won't ever share shocking stories about my life, but, it's not something I'm comfortable with right now. I also had another thought. If I'm gonna put all this effort into making a video, even if only a few people are gonna watch it, wouldn't it be worthwhile to share something that would have helped me? I decided I wanted to spread more positivity and understanding for people who went through things similar to myself. And after dancing around the subject, I realized it had to be about going through puberty with dysphoria. But Kate, that's not the topic of your video. You're supposed to talk to us about body odor. Yes, I was a smelly child, you're confused, and if you don't click off the video, you'll get to see how this all ties together. Body odor feels like a bit of a taboo subject. It's one of those things that's understood across the board as being equivalent to bad hygiene, and that people who smell are gross and should just stop. To a certain degree, I get the logic. The smell of body odor is generally unpleasant, and having to sit next to someone who permeates an aura of stank isn't fun. People who shower less frequently are also more likely to stink, hence the correlation between hygiene and the smell. I don't necessarily think this mindset is problematic per se. That's a bit of a strong word. However, I think the problem lies in the way people with body odor are framed and treated. I would say the majority of people make a handful of assumptions about them, firstmost being that A, this person is oblivious, irresponsible, and that they'll make a mess wherever space they're in. My next assumption B is usually that the person is just being lazy and that showering more and using deodorant will 100% solve the issue. My last point is less of an assumption and more of an attitude, point C, which is that those who smell are somehow less deserving of respect, and that they should be shamed into changing in the name of health and the well-being of those around them. Obviously, if I agreed with these points, this video would be over. But I don't. If you understand where I'm coming from and you're just here to hang out, hi, thank you for listening. But if you can't understand why someone would quote-unquote choose to walk around with a stench strong enough to make you crinkle your nose and you've never felt comfortable enough to ask them why, I encourage you to make yourself at home and listen to what I have to say. Let me paint a picture for you. It's late elementary school, around the time of year where the faculty finally decides, after half the girls have already gotten their periods, puberty can finally be discussed in the vaguest terminology possible. Hormones are kicking in, kids are getting meaner, and everyone's bodies are changing rapidly. While girls in your class whisper excitedly about boys and training bras, you're boiling in your hoodie, just waiting for the teacher to tap the corner of your desk and send you to the nurse's office. Believe it or not, most of us are aware of the smell, and we don't like it much more than you do. The stench follows us like a cloud, doing just about everything but painting a giant target on our heads. I could always tell what days I'd be sent to the nurse's office because not only did I, have a nose, but the atmosphere of everyone around me would change. It's not that I was oblivious to the gossip surrounding me, it was that there wasn't anything I could do about it. I think that stands for most people. If you're staring at us and whispering, we can tell you're not being subtle. I also think that tying traits such as responsibility and tidiness to smell is really weird. Body odor exists because you sweat, and without a strong enough or regularly applied deodorant, that sweat will smell. While the reason behind the smell can affect other factors of your life, that's not always the case. I smelled bad, and I wasn't exactly organized, but I did well in school, and for the few people willing to talk to me, I treated them with respect. Smelling bad and being professional in other aspects of your life are not mutually exclusive. The next thing I want to talk about is the misconception that these people are lazy and that they should just shower more regularly. And to that I say, I don't understand. I'm not honestly sure where to start, because for me, assuming you understand the concept that the world isn't an even playing ground and some people are at more of a disadvantage than others, it feels pretty self-explanatory. But I also know that just getting mad and calling people ignorant for not understanding isn't helpful. So I'll walk you through it. Imagine you're the average person. You realize after being out on a hot day, you start to smell. You have the motivation and the energy, the ability and the access to what you need to take a shower. So you clean off. And because your deodorant is enough to handle the amount of sweat you produce, you are good to go about your day. Nice and easy. But what happens if you take out even one of these factors? Let's start with motivation and/or energy. Maybe you're depressed, or you have so much on your plate that you can hardly even make time to eat or sleep. Regardless of having the ability and the means, if you have to conserve your energy and motivation just to go about your day, you're not going to be able to shower. Now, let's try ability. If you're physically disabled, you might not be able to shower on your own. Or even if you do, it might be more difficult for you. Access is a huge issue too, because if you don't have access to a working, clean shower, or even to just deodorant, you're also screwed. The population of people who are overworked, physically or mentally disabled, and in general, who come from low-income households, isn't something to sneeze at. And I can guarantee you that doesn't cover all your bases. Maybe you're in one of these categories and you don't find it to be a good enough excuse to be smelly. And to that I say, just because you're part of that category doesn't mean that you understand the whole of that category. Being poor but living in a house that your parents regularly maintain is very different from living in a trailer park that's falling apart. And not all people are capable of handling mental and/or physical disability in the same way. I also want to point out that some people are just biologically screwed by the fact that they sweat a lot, to the point where they require prescription deodorant to keep the smell at bay. Nobody ever asked me why I stunk. They just told me that it was a nuisance, and they continuously shoved the reason I was struggling in my face without even realizing it. I think if there was more education surrounding the topic, if someone had stopped to ask me why I was struggling instead of why I was wearing a hoodie in 90-degree weather, if they stopped probing a 12-year-old about wearing a bra and considered why I was so opposed in the first place, someone would have realized that I was struggling with gender dysphoria. I was a non-binary kid in a school system and a family that didn't even understand what being trans meant. I cried constantly, and the feeling of my chest touching my mom's as she hugged me made me want to gag. She checked every day to make sure I was wearing a bra, even though I'd learned to take it off under my clothes in the car, because wearing one meant I had to acknowledge that my chest existed. I had even asked my mother for what was essentially a binder before I even knew what that was. Not wearing deodorant and smoldering in my sweater were such small parts of the grand issue at hand, but it was the only ones that anyone would pay attention to because it was the only thing that they were affected by. They weren't trying to help me, they just wanted me to blend back into the background and be quiet. I don't think you have to force yourself to be friends with someone who smells consistently. More likely than not, if that person knew the thoughts running through your head when you hung out were, "Ew, they smell so bad, it's so gross," they wouldn't want to hang out with you either. Regardless of whether or not you're friends, they deserve your respect. This is another human being, and making fun of them or talking behind their back where you think they won't hear it is only going to add on to their struggle. It's not cool. It doesn't always stop at gossip either. I've had perfume sprayed at me in the locker rooms, which not only bothered my breathing, but once I broke out in hives. I also remember holding a birthday party, back when the teachers forced you to invite everybody. I was happy that so many people showed up, and I remember having a lot of fun. But when it came to opening presents, a lot of the gifts I received were shower products. And as the cherry on top, the thing that tiny me was absolutely ecstatic for was receiving an adorable skunk as my first webkin. I can't say for sure if this was malicious, especially since at the time, I didn't think anyone would go to such lengths just to bully somebody. But it was still in pretty poor taste. Regardless, I'll thank the person who gave me the skunk webkin, since now I've grown to really like skunks. I think they're really cute, hence I'm drawing them. So hopefully after all of this, you have a little more insight and understand that people who stink are just people trying to get through their life like everybody else. If you're content with just letting these people go about their day, then carry on. But maybe you're concerned for a friend, or there's a situation where the smell has to be addressed. I'll try to give you some of the best advice I can. I think regardless of how well you know this person, the best thing you can do is to be subtle. Addressing the subject in public is absolutely not okay, and even if you think no one's listening, it's still incredibly embarrassing. If you can, try to find a private place to talk. Empty rooms work great, but if complete privacy isn't possible, get as close as you can. This should be a one-on-one conversation, and unless something comes out where you are legally obligated to inform somebody, keep it to yourself. It's also best not to ask probing questions, or offer presumptuous help before you've heard what's wrong. Start with something simple. I don't really have a catch-all phrase, since what you say will depend on your familiarity with them and their situation. But something along the lines of, hey, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I thought you should know that you have some body odor that's noticeable at a distance. I was wondering if everything's been alright, or if there's anything you need. Just something friendly and genuinely helpful and concerned. Lastly, if you've already asked and there is nothing else you can do, don't bring it up again. Continuously reminding somebody that they smell is only helpful if it's genuinely something they have a difficult time recognizing, and have therefore specifically asked you for help with. You don't point out somebody's pimples every time their acne flares up, so why would you point out the smell? It's weird. And with that, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if any of this resonated with you, or if you learned something new. Otherwise, feel free to like and subscribe. Not only does it tell YouTube that you want to see more of me, but it's a good way to help share the message with others, if you want. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye!